He told me I was his entire world, promised to stand by me through everything. But when life broke me, he walked away smiling. But then, I turned every smile of his into a memory he'd begged to forget. You don't forget a moment like that. The moment someone speaks to your soul like they've lived in your silence. It was a rainy evening, not the romantic kind, but the kind that chills your bones and makes everything feel heavier. I had just come back from the hospital. My mother, the only family I had left, was gone. Dead. After fighting cancer for 2 years, she slipped away quietly, and I felt like my entire world went with her. That night, I collapsed in the middle of my living room. No lights, no sound, just me and the weight of a loss so deep it felt like drowning. And then, out of nowhere, there he was, Arav. He didn't knock. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat down beside me on the cold floor and pulled me into him like I belonged there, like he knew that silence better than anyone ever could. "I've got you now," he whispered. "You're not alone. You never will be again." And I believed him. God, I believed him. He was gentle in the beginning. The kind of man who knew when to speak and when to just listen. He brought me tea without asking how I liked it, and somehow got it right every time. He never made me explain my tears, never made me feel weak for falling apart. With him, grief didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like something that could be carried together. "I don't care about your past," he told me once, running his fingers through my hair. "I only care about your future. Our future." Those words became a lifeline. He moved in within a month. I didn't even question it. Everything hurt so much, and he was the only thing that made it bearable. He cooked, he cleaned, he made jokes that made me laugh when I hadn't smiled in weeks. He made me feel human again, and when you're broken, you'll cling to anything that feels like healing. I didn't realize then that not all healing is pure. Some of it is poison in disguise. Because slowly, almost too slowly to notice, his kindness turned to control. His concern began to feel like judgment. The first time I saw it was when I cried in the middle of a grocery store aisle, triggered by something stupid, a song playing on the store radio that reminded me of my mom. Instead of holding me, he sighed. "Not here, Myra," he said, his jaw tight. "You can't just fall apart every time something reminds you of her." I stood there, stunned. "I'm not doing it on purpose." "Yeah, well, it's exhausting." He walked ahead without even looking back. That was the first crack. The first time I saw something in his eyes that wasn't love. It was irritation. As if my grief had an expiration date, and I dared to keep it alive past its welcome. But I told myself it was just stress. Just one bad moment. That he still loved me, because he still kissed me goodnight. He still brought me flowers. He still whispered, "You're my world." Except now, those words started to feel hollow. Like he was reading a script. I didn't know it then, but that man, the one who held me while I sobbed, the one who said he'd never leave, wasn't saving me. He was studying me, learning how I broke. And one day, he would use every broken piece like a weapon. He promised to stand by me through everything. That was his favorite line. Like some sacred vow he thought was enough to cover up the things he refused to do. He said it when I got panic attacks at night. He said it when I forgot to eat because grief had swallowed my appetite. He said it when I blamed myself for my mother's death. And for a while, I believed him every time. But a promise means nothing when someone only shows up in words and not in action. I started noticing the distance before I admitted it out loud. His texts grew shorter. His phone calls, less frequent. He'd come home late, mumble excuses, and collapse on the couch like being around me was exhausting. No more forehead kisses. No more arms that held me like they were home. Just cold silences, detached glances, and guilt, the kind you don't recognize right away, because it's carefully dressed up as your own fault. Maybe I'm too much, I told myself. Maybe I'm too sad, too broken. And when I voiced those thoughts out loud, you know what he said? "Maybe you are." I remember sitting across from him at the kitchen table, The same table we once shared midnight takeout on, laughing and feeding each other fries. Now, we sat in silence, his eyes on his phone, mine on the space between us that used to be filled with connection. "I don't know what you want from me anymore," he muttered. "Just you," I whispered. He scoffed. "I've been here the whole time, Myra." But he wasn't. Not really. His body was in the room, but everything else had left months ago. And I was still trying to drag a corpse of a relationship across the burning coals of my pain. It got worse after I lost my job. It wasn't a big job, assistant manager at a boutique, but it gave me purpose, stability, a reason to get out of bed. When the store shut down, something inside me collapsed again. I felt the walls closing in. I cried for hours, hoping he'd understand that it wasn't just about the job, it was about losing the last thread of normalcy I had left. But when I told him, he didn't hold me. He didn't reassure me. He just sighed and said, "You're not the only one going through stuff, you know," and walked out of the room. I sat on the floor for hours after that. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because I was starting to run out of tears. Grief had burned me hollow. And Arav. He was adding splinters to a body already split open. The next week, he didn't come home for 2 nights. No explanation. No apologies. When I asked, he waved it off. Stayed at Almond's place. We had a guys' night, except Almond called me that same night, looking for Arav. That's when my stomach turned. That's when the dread began to crawl in. I didn't say anything right away. I just started watching, observing, noticing how he guarded his phone, how he smiled at messages I couldn't see, how he changed his passwords, how he smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but deep down, I already knew. He was falling in love with someone else, while I was still falling apart. The irony? He still said he loved me, still called me his world, even as he built another one without me in it. I wanted to scream, shake him, ask him why he was lying to me, to my face. But I didn't, because something inside me was shifting, hardening. I wasn't the same girl who cried at his silence or begged for his attention anymore. No, something colder had taken root. Something quieter, stronger, more dangerous. And soon, he'd understand the difference between losing me and breaking me. Because breaking me had consequences. But when life broke me, he didn't reach for the pieces. He just watched. Watched me unravel like a frayed thread. And instead of helping me stitch myself back together, he walked further and further away. As if I was contagious. As if pain was something to be ashamed of once it stopped being poetic and started being real. I remember the night I truly knew he was gone, even though his body still lived in our apartment, even though his shoes still sat by the door. I had another breakdown. Not a loud one. No sobbing. No screaming. Just stillness. That terrifying kind of stillness that feels like surrender. I was sitting on the bathroom floor. The tiles were cold against my skin. My phone buzzed beside me, messages from HR about another job rejection. I had no one left to call. No family. No friends who hadn't grown tired of checking in. And him? He was in the other room, laughing, with someone on the phone. I could hear him clearly, his voice lighter, warmer than it ever sounded when he spoke to me. I pressed my ear to the floor just to hear the tone in his voice. He chuckled like a man who'd never held a broken girl in his arms. Like someone who hadn't promised the world and delivered a storm. I stayed like that for over an hour. Not moving. Not breathing too loud. I wanted to scream into the silence, tear something apart, ask the universe why it gave me a man who studied my ruins only to set them on fire. But I did nothing. Because I realized something that night. He wasn't the one who broke me. Life did. He was just the one who enjoyed it. That's what cut the deepest. Not the distance. Not the cheating. Not even the lies. It was the smile. The way he smiled as I drowned. That smug, careless, unbothered smile. The one I used to love. The one I now wanted to erase from existence. But I didn't confront him. Not then. Not yet. Because something was changing inside me. Not just pain anymore, but clarity. A sharp, cold kind of clarity that only comes when your heart has been ripped out and fed to someone you trusted. I started noticing everything. Every time he left the apartment, he dressed up more than usual. Clean shaved, cologne, shirts I hadn't seen in months. He'd say it was just a casual dinner with clients, but his eyes danced too much for a business meeting. His phone never left his side. When he showered, it came into the bathroom with him. He even started locking his laptop. I didn't need proof. I needed a plan. I stopped crying. Stopped asking. Stopped playing the part of the grieving woman who needed him. And that's when he got comfortable again. Started leaving things out. Little things he thought I wouldn't notice. Lipstick on his collar once. A different scent in his car. A receipt from a hotel tucked carelessly into his coat pocket. Each one was a tiny knife. But I didn't flinch. Because pain was no longer a stranger, it was an old friend. And this time, it wasn't going to paralyze me. It was going to shape me. He didn't know it, but every lie, every kiss meant for someone else, every night he left me to cry alone, he was building something inside me. Brick by brick. Something cold. Unforgiving. And when I was done bleeding, when I was done being the broken girl waiting to be saved, I would become something he'd never forget. Because love can only break you so many times. After that, it sharpens. He walked away smiling. That's the part I couldn't forget. Not the cheating. Not the betrayal. But the smile. The ease on his face while I suffocated in silence. The relief in his body language as if letting me fall apart was some sort of freedom for him. Like I was a burden he finally shook off, and the weightlessness made him glow. That smile haunted me. And it fed something inside me that I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Fire. Not the wild, passionate kind that lovers talk about. No, this fire was colder. Calculated. Silent. It didn't burn for warmth. It burned for balance. For justice. For every night I stayed up crying while he whispered sweet nothings into someone else's ears. For every promise he carved into my bones only to toss them aside like litter. For every time he kissed my forehead with lips that had just lied. He thought I didn't know. He thought I was still the broken girl. Still too weak. Too soft. Too desperate to walk away. He had no idea. I started small. I mirrored him, distanced myself, made excuses, spent time in rooms he wasn't in. I stopped reacting. That confused him at first. He'd say things, sharp things, meant to hurt, and I'd just nod, unaffected. The more distant I became, the more he tried to test my limits. It was fascinating to watch him spiral, not because I was pushing him, but because I had stopped chasing him. And men like him? They need to be chased. They need to be begged. When I took that away, he grew. Nervous. He started checking my phone when I wasn't looking. Snuck glances at my screen when I typed. Asked questions about where I went, who I talked to. That's when I knew. He was insecure. Afraid. The man who once watched me crumble was now watching me rise, and it terrified him. So I pushed further. I created an email account. Fake name. Blank profile. From that account, I began reaching out, not to him, but to her. The other woman. I didn't send messages. Not yet. Just followed. Observed. She posted photos of them. Not together, of course. But little things. His watch on a nightstand. A coffee mug he owned. A shirt that used to be mine. She had no idea. And neither did he. Until I started leaving breadcrumbs. A photo of me in awe, framed and untouched, moved from the hallway to the bedroom, right behind his Zoom camera. a lipstick stain on his wine glass during their date night, the one I knew about because she posted her wine too. I sent her a playlist once. No name. No note. Just one track. Used to Love You by Gwen Stefani. She posted a cryptic story the next day. A woman who watches in silence isn't weak. She's planning. She was catching on. Good. Because this wasn't just about breaking her off. It was about letting the truth rot everything he tried to build behind my back. I started leaving messages on her content anonymously. Questions only I could know the answers to. Comments about places only Arav had taken me, but now she was visiting. It took days, but eventually. She messaged me back. "Do I know you?" she asked. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because the game wasn't ready to end. He still smiled when he thought I wasn't looking. Still played the role of the stressed but faithful boyfriend. But that smile, that smug, thoughtless smile, it wouldn't last much longer. Because I was building a truth so sharp it would slice through every one of his lies. And when it all came crashing down, he wouldn't be smiling anymore. And that's when I stopped asking why. Why he changed. Why he stopped holding me. Why his promises turned into weapons. I didn't need answers anymore. Because I already knew. Arav didn't love me. He loved how broken I was. Loved the power he had when I relied on him. Loved being the hero in a story he never truly wanted to fix. He craved the illusion of saving me. Not the reality of staying when things got hard. And once I no longer fit that fantasy, he rewrote the story without me. But I wasn't going to beg to be in his narrative anymore. No. I was writing my own ending now. And in mine. He paid for everything. Her name was Isha. I found it through a tag story she posted on a random Tuesday, a photo of her fingers laced with his signature leather bracelet giving him away. I stared at the image for a long time, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. The pain was finally burning into something else. Purpose. Isha wasn't innocent, not completely. You don't sleep beside someone every night and miss the signs that they're lying. But I didn't hate her. I pitied her. Because she was walking down the same path I once did, thinking she was the exception to the damage he left behind. So, I replied to her message. Just 4 words. "I think we should talk." She responded in less than 10 minutes. We met at a coffee shop halfway between her apartment and mine. She wore his hoodie, the same one he used to let me steal when I was cold. I didn't flinch. Just smiled. She looked at me like she was trying to figure out where she'd seen my face before. I broke the silence first. "I'm Myra." Her eyes widened. She knew. Arav had mentioned me, probably not by name, but I could tell by the way she stiffened. She swallowed hard, fingers tightening around her cup. "I'm guessing you're not here to talk about the weather," she said quietly. I shook my head. "I'm here to tell you the truth." And then I told her everything. From the first kiss to the last lie. From the night he held me while I grieved my mother, to the weekend he disappeared, the same weekend she posted pictures from a spa getaway. I showed her texts. Photos. Proof. Not to hurt her, but to wake her up. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the screenshots. "He told me you were just a friend from college," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. "Funny. He told me you were his boss's cousin." The silence between us wasn't cold. It was sad. Heavy. Like we were both survivors of the same storm, finally meeting after the wreckage. "You still love him?" she asked. I thought about it. "No," I said honestly. "But I remember what it felt like when I did. And I remember how it felt to realize none of it was real for him." She looked down. "So, what now?" I leaned in, voice steady. "Now, we stopped letting him get away with it." She looked up, something in her eyes shifting. She was no longer heartbroken. She was furious. And that was exactly what I needed. Because the game wasn't over yet. Arav thought he was untouchable. That he could lie to 2 women, tear down lives, and walk away with a smirk. But he forgot something vital. We were no longer enemies. And two broken women are far more dangerous than one. That's when he realized. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't waiting for his love. I wasn't hoping for his return. I wasn't begging for his attention. I had dried every tear on my own sleeve, picked myself up off that cold bathroom floor, stitched the holes in my own soul, no thanks to him. The girl who once clung to his words like they were oxygen was gone. And in her place was me, sharp, calm, unforgiving. Arav noticed the shift. He noticed the way I stopped flinching when he raised his voice. The way I laughed at his lame excuses. The way I looked right through him like he was nothing more than an obstacle I was ready to remove. He didn't like it. Men like him never do. Because when their victim stops bleeding, they lose control. And without control, they panic. That's when the lying got sloppy. He left his location on by accident one night. Said he was working late. His phone told a different story, a rooftop bar across town. I didn't even ask him about it. I just smiled when he came home smelling like expensive perfume and cheap guilt. Because now, I had bigger plans. Isha and I became allies. Quietly. Carefully. We planned every step like surgeons preparing for the most delicate operation. No mistakes. No mess. We needed precision. She told me everything, all the lies he'd spun, all the promises he recycled from what he used to say to me. He told her he'd never loved anyone the way he loved her. He used to say the same thing to me, word for word. And then Isha did something I didn't expect. She offered to wear a wire. Not for the police. For us. To hear what he really says when he doesn't know he's being heard. To catch him in his natural state, dishonest, smug, manipulative. So we staged it. She invited him over to her apartment. Set the wine. Dimmed the lights. Played the role of the doting girlfriend. And he performed right on cue. Yeah, she's still around, he said, chuckling. I'll probably get rid of her soon. She's getting too quiet. I don't trust that, she asked him. You don't feel guilty at all? He scoffed. Please. Myra was pathetic. All that crying, that clinging. I did her a favor. She should be thanking me for not dumping her earlier. My fingers clenched the edge of the table as I listened. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Because his words weren't breaking me anymore. They were building my case. Arav had no idea that the final version of me was already standing behind the curtain, watching, listening, calculating. And I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to take everything. His reputation. His carefully curated, loyal boyfriend image. His lies. His smirks. His little kingdom of control. I was going to light it all on fire. And let him burn in the ashes of his own ego. But I needed one final move. One that would make sure he never recovered. So I waited. Watched. And as he kept spinning his little web of deception, I prepared the scissors. Because revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. Cold. And it waits until you think you've won. Before it strikes. But then, I made sure he'd never hurt another woman again. Not by destroying him loudly. But by erasing the parts of him he used to manipulate us all. His charm. His credibility. His illusion of control. He used to tell me stories of his childhood, how no one ever listened to him, how he felt invisible growing up. I pitied him then. I thought maybe that was why he needed so much attention now. Why he collected women like armor pieces to hide his emptiness. But now I saw it clearly. He didn't hurt because he was broken. He hurt because he enjoyed the breaking. We took everything he used as a shield and shattered it in front of him. Isha published her side of the story anonymously on a major women's platform. So did the others. Slowly, steadily, more women added their voices. Same name. Same pattern. Same manipulation. Soon, Arab's name was no longer whispered behind closed doors. It was headlined. He tried to deny it, of course. Released a statement about misunderstandings and emotional instability. Tried to play the victim one last time. But the world didn't believe him anymore. Because this time, there were too many of us. His clients dropped him. His friends stepped back. His carefully curated reputation shattered under the weight of the truth. But it wasn't just about public exposure. That would fade. No, I wanted something more permanent. So I went back to the place where it all began, the cafe where we first met. He was there, alone. No woman beside him this time. No confident smirk. Just a man who finally realized his game had ended, and he had lost. He looked up and saw me. Something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or fear. I walked over. Sat across from him. Didn't say a word at first. Just let the silence press against his skin like ice. Finally, he asked, "Why are you here?" I tilted my head. Smiled, softly, coldly. To say goodbye. To what? Us. I laughed, a low, calm sound that made him flinch. No, I said. To the version of me who needed your love to feel worthy. He looked down. You ruined me. No, I replied, my voice razor sharp. You did that. I just made sure the mask you wore finally slipped. He sat there, stunned, searching for something, anger, maybe. Redemption. But I didn't owe him either. I stood up, leaned in close enough for him to hear the final words he'd ever get from me. You built your empire out of broken women, I whispered. But you forgot, eventually, broken things learn how to cut back. And then I walked away. Not out of weakness, but out of power. Because I had nothing left to prove. No more tears to give. No more love to waste. Arav would wake up every day knowing he couldn't silence the truth. Knowing every woman who ever trusted him had found her voice. Knowing his name would never be spoken with R again, only with warning. And that was my justice. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that makes headlines forever. But the kind that lingers in the quiet moments when he's alone with his thoughts. And they finally start to turn against him. He'll remember me. He'll remember all of us. But none of us will ever have to remember him with pain again. Because now, he's just a cautionary tale. And we're the ones who survived.